So for my presentation, I chose to do Aboriginal crime in Canada, an analysis of crime rates and victimization of Aboriginals in Canada. I predicted that Aboriginal people would experience much higher levels of victimization and crime than other Canadian citizens. Part 1, Violent Victimization of Aboriginal People. So the first graph shows us violent victimization of Aboriginal people versus non-Aboriginal people, and we can see that Aboriginal people are twice as likely, if not more, to be violently victimized. The second graph shows us violent victimization of Aboriginal people by gender, and we can see that Aboriginal females, especially those between the ages of 15 and 24, are the most likely to be victimized. So contributing factors to victimization: being young, the Aboriginal population is very young, they often live in lone parent households, they don't have much education, most of them don't even have a high school diploma, many of them are unemployed, and many of them live with substance abuse issues. Part 2, Domestic Violence among Aboriginal people. We can see that 29% of non-Aboriginals are likely to experience domestic violence, comparable to 40% of Aboriginals, and 3% of non-Aboriginal women, comparable to 10% of Aboriginal women. Child abuse among Aboriginal children, and we can see that Aboriginal females are the most likely to be abused, and some of the numbers are disturbingly high, with 52% of Aboriginal females being physically maltreated as children. Spousal violence among Aboriginal people versus non-Aboriginal people, and we can see that Aboriginal women are 3 times as likely to experience spousal violence, and Aboriginal men are twice as likely to experience spousal violence. So the contributing factors here are rates of report, so how many people actually report domestic violence, the rates between men and women. Women are more likely to report domestic violence, so that might be why the women's numbers are higher, and the frequency, so if people experience it 20 times, do they report it once or do they report it all 20 times? Part 3, the justice system and Aboriginal people. Level of confidence in police, and we can see that the numbers are the same for the most part, but the Aboriginal people are less likely to have a great deal of confidence and more likely to have not very much confidence or no confidence at all. For perception of safety, we can see that the numbers are fairly consistent until we look at urban Aboriginals, and there we can see that urban Aboriginals don't feel as safe, and this is because they're more likely to be targeted due to discrimination in big cities. Some factors here are case outcomes, so a lot of Aboriginal cases go to court and then are dismissed or rule in favor of the offender, and over-policing, I put the definition up, but a lot of Aboriginal neighborhoods are over-policed, and this leaves Aboriginal people feeling like they can't have confidence in the police. Part 4, Homicides among Aboriginal people. Homicide victims by Aboriginal identity, province, and territory, and we can see that provinces and territories that have high Aboriginal populations have a lot of Aboriginal homicide victims. Contributing factors: victimization rates, which I talked about at the start, and missing and murdered Indigenous women. So Indigenous women are 7 times more likely to be murdered than non-Indigenous women. Part 5, admissions of Aboriginal people into correctional facilities. Admissions of Aboriginals to adult correctional facilities, and we can see that provinces that have a high number of Aboriginals also have a high number of admissions. There's 3 sort of contributing factors and hidden variables here: age, level of education, and employment status, and age is the most important one because the Aboriginal population is very young. So if we actually split up the offenders by age, we would find that all of the Aboriginal offenders fall into the younger category and none of them fall into the older category. So I found that the root of Aboriginal crime and victimization is the Canadian government, and the 2 main issues are poverty and systematic discrimination. And I gave 3 ways to change these issues: funding of proper schools on all Aboriginal reserves, implementation of Aboriginal youth centres, especially crisis centres, and education of Canadian justice officers to avoid discrimination. Thank you.